Have you been having problems with your defense, or do you want to become even better at it at the start of the game? If you are looking to get some answers and learn the most important aspects of the defense, then you're watching the right video. I am Khan, also known as Jedi Jester, and today we are going to talk about the essential points of the defensive side of FIFA 22. When we talk about defense, the first thing that comes to mind is tackling. Tackles, especially the standing tackles, seem to be really strong this year, which allows you to go aggressive on your opponent more successfully. You can be really proactive and try to get the ball back from your opponent much better compared to the previous games. But that doesn't mean that you have to commit to tackling all the way down. To be able to get a tackle in, you need to close down the opponent first, and the opponent's player has to be vulnerable against your tackle. If he is facing away from your defender, or if you spam the tackling button too much in unnecessary situations, you are still going to mistackle a lot and get beaten by the attacker. So everything in its right order. Close down the opponent first, limit their angles, and force them to be vulnerable to a tackle before getting your foot in. But how should we close down the opponent and limit their angles? That would be a question, which is a really simple answer, which brings us to jockeying. Jockey is a defensive stance which allows us to anticipate the attacker's movement with our defenders much more easily. If used correctly, we can mirror the opponent's movements and deny every single attempt he has in his mind. The input is simple as well. You just have to hold on to the L2 LT button to be able to jockey. There is a setting for it in your controller settings as well, which makes it either manual or assisted. However, with the new competitive master switch, jockeying can only be used on manual if you're trying to compete against real players in competitive modes such as FIFA Ultimate Team, Pro Clubs, or Seasons. Assisted jockey setting was adjusting your defender's movement speed automatically once getting closer towards the attacker, but now with the mandatory manual setting, you have to adjust it all by yourself. That means you can still run while jockeying, but the downside is you don't get to take more sharp turns while you're running. So, how to use it more efficiently? The only time that you have to use the sprint button is when you're trying to close a gap between your defender and the attacker who has the ball. When you get near the attacker, you have to completely let go of your sprint button and only use the jockey button, because the simple jockey allows you to mirror the small turnarounds of the opponent and is very effective. Otherwise, you will throw yourself into some direction and the opponent can get rid of you quite easily. If the opponent tries to run into space, then you can use the sprint button to catch up again, and remember to let it go again once you catch them and you are in a safe distance. In this example, I try to get myself in front of the attacker by using the jockey button. He passes the ball and gets it back and has space in front of him. I need to make sure that I have a solid stance against him, so I use the jockey button again. However, he starts to run, and at this moment, I need to use the sprint button to catch him up. Right after I get to the same level with him, I'll let go of the sprint button and only use the jockey to have the defensive stance as well and wait for him to make a mistake. With the quick turning ability that the jockey movement gives me, I get the ball away from the attacker as he pushes the ball away from his feet. Before we dive deeper, I just want to remind you that if you are looking to improve your FIFA 22 gameplay, then definitely check out our brand new The Guide Plus application. Here, you can navigate between various categories and find tips on what you're mostly interested in. You can also follow structured courses, track your progress, and earn badges for completing lessons. Along the way, we have prepared different quiz types to ensure that you are learning efficiently. Download the Guide Plus application to take your FIFA 22 experience one step further. The download links are in the description below. In our transition video to FIFA 22, we talked about this game being much more of a passing game rather than a simulation where all the players just run around doing skill moves. So passing is eventually very important in the attacking build-up. To be able to counter this passing game, you need to see the passing lanes and pre-move your players between the passer and the receiver. This is a very strong strategy if the opponent sends out obvious and predictable passes, and you can turn the opponent's attack into yours before his doesn't even start. One key mechanic to cutting the passing lanes is once again the jockey. Not only allowing you to move much better, jockeying will also help you with the cutting off the passes as soon as you try to get in between the passer and the receiver. However, this can easily lead to the situations where you open up your defense and give away unnecessary openings just because you thought you were going to cut off one passing lane and move your defender out of his position and create a gap by yourself. So be really careful with your commitment towards the passing lane. The best way to cut off a pass is to first switch to a defender who is close and then get him towards the passing lane, but not quite exactly on it, so that if the pass doesn't happen, you can take him a step back towards his original position before switching to another player. This method allows you to use either option according to both scenarios. If the attacker sends the predicted pass, you can intercept it, or otherwise, you can move your player back and switch to another defender. So with that explained, we also need to take a look at the player switches. Player switching in the defense has become much more crucial, and a single mistake can lead to a chaos in your defense, which will probably end up with a goal. You need to switch consistently between your players, and the most efficient way to do this is the right analog switch. This has been the same for some years now, and you can take a look at one of our videos which explains this method in detail down in the description below. You should be using the mix of L1 and the right analog stick switching very actively in your defense to be able to select the most optimal player. With this year's attacking meta, I find it extremely important to get the correct player switching in two situations. We explained the first one just in the last topic, which was to cut the passing lanes by selecting the defender and pre-moving him in towards the passing lane. The second is much more dangerous in my opinion. In your matches, you are going to encounter a lot of players who will pass the ball around, and when the opportunity appears, they will try to go for a strong driven pass, mostly through the center. You need to be ready for these types of situations. If you can't get the correct player switch, then you will lose control, and while you're trying to maintain it, you will probably already concede the goal. To ensure that this doesn't happen, always know which player you have currently selected and your target who you want to switch to. This is a game changer in defense and will probably save you a lot of times this year. One of the other things that we might need to mention here is the new icon switching as well, which can be activated by pressing the R3 button while defending. After you activate it, some buttons will appear above your players, and if you press one of them, then you switch to the player who had the pressed button above his head. With all the given player switches, your goal should be to find the perfect balance between them in different situations to get the most out of them. While you're defending, you can use the R1 or RB button to call up an AI-controlled player to come closer to the opposition's dribbler to be able to reduce the angles. This is called second man contain, but I would rather call it the second man pressure, since this mechanic automatically tackles the ball out of the opponent's feet. To be more efficient with this mechanic, you need to know that you can't hold the R1 button all the time, since all of the players have a unique contained stamina. Once this runs out, you won't be able to contain with this player for a period of time until it gets charged up. Let's take a look at how to use the second man contain efficiently. You can certainly use this mechanic to close down all of the angles to put pressure on the opponent. To get the most out of it, you need to watch the movement of the AI player who is under the effect of player contain, which presses at the attacker from one side. What you need to do is to cover the other angle, which is not covered by the AI player, so that you control both sides. This way, you can easily force an error for your opponent and get the ball back. The second way to use this mechanic is to let the AI do the job up front while you try to cover potential dangers in the backyard. That means you can let the AI press at the dribbler, and in the meanwhile, you can block one of the potential passing lanes to trap him. While using the second man contain, you need to make sure that you're not moving one of your defenders way too much out of his position. If you do so, you might give up unnecessary openings, which could be punished by the opponent. With all these overpowered long shots getting in, you can't let your opponents take these shots from distance. If you decide to hold back and give enough space to the opponent, they will take the advantage of it and shoot the ball onside. That's why you need to confront most of the attackers who have good long-range shooting attributes. Here is an example of me not confronting the attacker who can shoot from the distance. He simply gets the angle and shoots the ball right in. In another example, this time I try to confront my opponent and get into the direct shooting lane to block. It is also important to know the profile of the player as well. For example, if you're trying to defend Messi, then you know he's a left-footed player and has the finesse trait. Therefore, your first aim should be to block his left foot. So we could also say positioning your player in that case is really important, which brings us to our final topic. Last but not least, this is something you need to watch out for all the time. Positioning your players correctly can block multiple opportunities at the same time. Since this year's auto blocks are extremely effective, especially in the box, your player's positioning is much more important. Let's say the attacker is on a one-on-one with your defender, and if he beats your player, he will go straight towards the goal. You don't need to panic. Instead, you need to stand your ground and position your player between the attacker and your goal. As long as you stand on that line and do not gamble out of it, then you will be able to block any shots that your opponent attempts. This is a very simple yet a very effective method. So that's it for today's video. Just before closing it all up, we want to ask you what you think about the second man Concede. Do you think it is overpowered right now and should be nerfed? Let us know what you think about it in the comment section below. We really hope you enjoyed this video. If so, feel free to drop a like as a sign of support. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and don't miss any upcoming FIFA 22 videos, as there will be more videos coming in the following days. Feel free to check out our individual coaching services as well if you're interested in getting trained by elite coaches. You can find a link to that down in the description. I'll talk to you on the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.